And thank you very much for joining us on the Job Scam Report. My name is Mark Anthony Dice, and I'm here with Jay Jones. Ashley Price Horton is not going to join us today. So shout out to her. And maybe she'll catch the comments and be able to comment later, which she probably will. But
Mm.
we want to wish her well in everything that she's doing and trying to take care of. In the meantime, thank you all for joining us. Those of you in chat, just let us know
Thank you.
where you're from. And Jay, how you doing?
Doing all right, still at it, still on the mission, and I'm glad to be back once again and continue to bring pressure. So yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Bringing pressure and also informing and encouraging, educating people on job scams, what the latest job scams are. And a
Mhm.
lot of you've watched the news, and I don't know if you've been watching, Jay, but what we've been doing through the podcast and what we've been doing through the LinkedIn Lives, we're ahead of a lot of the news that actually comes out. I've been watching the news pretty closely now for about a year and a half. And what I do on the Job Scam Report, what you talk about in on LinkedIn posts are practically in real time as it's actually happening. I mean,
Mhm.
I've even tried to talk to some of my colleagues who write and are journalists, and a lot of them they don't consider fake LinkedIn profiles news yet, when it actually is, because they consider a very narrow path to a job search. I understand that most people don't use LinkedIn, and even people who have a LinkedIn profile don't use LinkedIn, but
Mhm.
large part is going to become a bigger deal eventually. So those of you who are watching, you're ahead of many people who are not watching us. And I've got to say too, I'll even brag a little bit that I'm probably the first and only dedicated career site that's dedicated to talking about job scams. I know that's
Yeah.
kind of going out of the way to brag, but I'm serious. We have 3,500 plus subscribers, new subscribers every week, almost every other day, 2 days. So again, we want to get down to it. And we were going to talk about fake jobs and ghost jobs and the difference. And I wrote an article this morning on my Substack. And if you want to join my Substack, you can follow the ticker, or I'll just go ahead and put it up here on the third so that more of you can even see it, and you can get a hold of it. Again, feel free to comment, feel free to put your questions, and we'll try to check every now and then to see what's going on. I'm kind of running point here in all the technology, and I'll be looking at the messages and the comments that you guys have. Feel free to put any questions that you have there. But I think it's very important to have that conversation about fake jobs and real jobs, because on LinkedIn, and this is kind of the window to people's perception, that some people are mistaking ghost jobs for fake jobs and fake jobs for ghost jobs. I don't know if you
Yeah.
recognize that, but a lot of people are kind of mistaken. Fake jobs is are a whole lot more straightforward than ghost
Mhm.
jobs. Fake
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. And the
You could
main difference
give a
with
take.
fake jobs and ghost jobs, like a fake job is you'll typically have a lot of bloviated terms. It'll be long winded. It'll be immediate reach out from quote unquote recruiters to try to get you to apply, try to get your resume, funnel you into the ATS scheme, saying that it failed. And then they would then make it ATS
Mhm.
compatible for a fee. And then from there, they will make you pay for it. And then with you paying for it, they get your payment information. And then when it comes to a ghost job, what you'll see is the opposite. So you'll have initially a recruiter will reach out to you and say, hey, I have this role that I think it'd be a great fit for. And this is not true in 100% of the cases, but it is common when it comes to ghost jobs is they'll reach out to you, have you give your information via your resume, and then you'll never hear from them again.
Mhm.
You'll also see a ton of applicants, like thousands and thousands of applicants, but the job never gets taken down. It just keeps reposting and reposting. And from there, that's a quality sign that it is a ghost job, because given how many people are in the market looking for jobs, especially in the writing space and other spaces like data entry and whatnot, if you see a job that has thousands and thousands of applicants and it just keeps on reposting, there's no true intention to fill it, because there's no way you didn't find at least one person that's qualified to take that role.
Right. I think to even break it down even further, fake jobs basically come from fake companies, essentially. In other words,
Yeah, yeah,
they'll put out there purposely to say to track people and to get them to sign up or get them to apply to capture the personal information. No telling how they're going to use it, but believe me, it has to do with money. And I think money becomes the arbitrage to get people to get them to buy in. But ultimately, by the time they get that information on an application on a resume, it's too late even before they even take your money, because they're going
yeah,
to use that information, they're going to collect it and then resell it or misuse it in many different ways, or even become an imposter of you because they have your information based on your resume. So they can go in and easily create a LinkedIn profile, put a different name on it, but use your credentials, experience, and all that. They won't be able to talk to it, but they'll be able to capture someone's attention. And I think it is very important to even talk about intention when we talk about ghost jobs and fake jobs, because ghost jobs is a little bit more layered as far as, because actual companies will post ghost jobs. They'll have a
yeah. I
job
mean,
that
okay.
they actually have a job where they'll post it on Indeed, LinkedIn, wherever, but they have no intention of hiring for that job whatsoever.
Hmm.
And they're going to collect information, and we're not sure how they use it, although there are a lot of job sites that do give some sort of explanation as to what they use that information for. Where a lot of them fail is if I'm just applying for the job and you're telling me that the only way that you're going to use this information is for the job, for their survey, and to uh, give to their third party vendors, that's a problem. And that's a
Yeah,
problem where it gets into the stratosphere, the internets of space, where is somebody that you don't even vet very well very often. We don't know that because we don't know if we could trust your third party. You trust them because you transacted
yeah.
based on that.
I,
Go
and
ahead.
I've said this before, that the major currency of the day is information. It's not money.
Yes.
And when you're
Yes.
dealing
So
with
bye.
ghost jobs from legitimate companies, I think it's a nasty practice. I would be less bothered by it if they just said, "Hey, this is our intention for this role. We're not actively hiring for it right now, but we will in the future." And
Yeah.
even that's a gray area, because that in the future they could just never do it. But
Right.
what bothers me is the willfulness to post a job that will get a lot of traction, and
Hmm.
then that you're going to get all these applicants, and they're basically paying you with their information and getting nothing in return. So down the road you're making all this money on these people, and they don't see a dime of it, and they gave you the very thing that you get value from. And
Right.
then when it comes to the difference, ghost jobs, the intention is to build a pipeline and test the job market and see what is actually, an in-demand role. And a fake job, the entire intent is just to rob you. But there is a wrinkle and a caveat in that, where a scammer will use a real company and post a fake job under that company's name. And so it looks like a ghost job, but it's actually a fake one, because the real company was spoofed, so to speak.
Right. And in fact, they'll even use real identities to bait
Hmm.
people into it. In other words, they could say that they're from so and so, and you may decide to be smart to look them up on LinkedIn, and you say, hey, this is the real legitimate person. They may give you one or two names, and you're looking,
Hmm.
okay, now I can trust this person even though the person isn't on
Mm.
LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Or better
Yeah.
yet, or better yet, even in the scenario that people are how should I say it, that they'll pretend to be that person, But unless you send a message, hey, connect with me on LinkedIn, you won't know that that's not the person that belongs to the profile. That you're just believing the caller because they cited that name. So there's a lot of ends to a mean. But all that to say is, a lot of times, even that they'll say that this person and this fake, unless they're recruiter, some people will say that they're HR directors. I've never seen an HR director go and advertise for a single job
No, no,
or
that's
single
talent
job
acquisition.
or did that's talent acquisition. Those are your recruiters. You might have a hiring manager every now and then that's more active. They might be part of a small company and they'll
I was
have the
gonna say that.
badge
Yeah.
that I'm yeah, and they'll have the badge I'm hiring, and
Hmm.
that but they're interactive. They won't
Yeah.
try to take you to a messaging app like the fake ones do,
Yeah. Like
or
WhatsApp
have
or
you apply
Fiverr. Yeah.
at or have you apply through this rogue site where there's not much information, but they copied what they could and pasted on a URL that's going to disappear in a day or two of you applying. So it is almost they got, like we talked before, they got you before they get you. And I think people
Yep.
have to be much more vigilant in understanding how that comes about, because they'll have a lot of information before. So hopefully, that you all will be much more aware. But let's break down the whole behavior aspect of the fake jobs and the ghost jobs, because a lot of times there are ways to find out if a company's actually hiring for that ghost job,
Hmm.
is just by going and contacting the company or looking for the recruiter. Fake jobs, there's no such balance, because if you call the real company and say we're not advertising it, and they'll ask, hopefully the more conscious ones will ask, where did you see that at? Then you could tell them, I saw it on this particular post, and tell
Hmm.
them where it is, and then they can take action. And I've seen that on a couple of occasions where companies say, "Hey, if so and so, if you've getting approached, we're not advertising for that job. That's not our post. That's not our
Hmm.
real company." And hopefully, they'll take the next steps. As opposed to a ghost job, you can call and they'll confirm whether they're actively hiring. Still, the difference being that both are collecting your personal information, and you're unsure of what they do with it.
Yeah, like a ghost job from a real company, they'll collect your information and the possibility of selling it down the road, they'll do that. But they won't, steal your identity and, outright, send you
Right.
fake checks as part of the job opportunity.
Right.
And then when it comes to like the different behaviors, I've seen it many times where if you see a job on LinkedIn that's posted and the description is solid and matches the role and the title, thank you, Mariah, for that. And you see it matching the role and the title, but then you can't click on the company and there's no website of the company. Like I've seen that multiple times where it's like you go up to the top to see the company's name and there's nothing there. That is a telltale sign that it's a fake job, because what you should always do is go to the professed company's website and see, look through it, see if it's, built well, or if it's shoddily thrown together
Mhm.
quickly. That's a telltale sign.
Right.
And then you can also search the job description. So you just copy it, put it into Google, and then put quotes around it. And what that'll do is that'll show you every single iteration of that job description that has ever appeared. And there's a wrinkle there, because when it comes to certain job descriptions, legitimate companies will just copy and paste it, because they just don't want to go through the effort of writing out a unique job description for something that is a universal role that has typical responsibilities.
Yeah.
And what you can find in that is, if you see this company says that they're hiring for this role, but it only appears in one other place, and that was many months ago, and is no longer accepting applications, that's a telltale sign that they stole that description in order to trick people into applying to their fake job.
Yep. And you can also look to see who you connected with who might know someone in that company to actually ask. because very many times the employee will know if that's an actual job or not, and sometimes they may have insight into it. I'm not saying go and ask them and then try to swindle yourself into a referral. I know that's where a few of you all are going, and I get that. Referrals about relationships, but that's another discussion for another podcast. We're here to talk about finding out and investigating it, to make sure that the job you're applying is real, because that's a lot of time wasted. There's a lot of time
Yeah.
wasted in applying to jobs that aren't active. So it's better to go through the extra mile on the front end than to find out on the back end that you've been waiting and hoping to hear from someone that you are not going to hear from.
Yeah, I mean, it's happened to me where, hiring managers, they'll reach out and say, "Hey, you're a perfect match for this role. Please apply." So I
Mm,
do, and then I heard nothing back. I followed up maybe 3 or 4 times, and still to this day, never heard anything back. And that is a telltale sign of a ghost job. If somebody's reaching out and they say you're a perfect fit, it's a gray area because they could be trying to, fill a diversity requirement, or they could just be
right.
trying to reach a certain limit when it comes to applicants, which really shouldn't be a problem in this market, because anytime you're on LinkedIn and you see you see a job, it'll typically have tons of applicants. So filling a quota when it comes to the numbers should never be an issue. But yeah.
Right. Well, I think that one thing people need to keep in mind, that when you see those numbers, those aren't actual applications per se. The buttons are counting clicks. They're
Hmm.
not, from what I understand, they're not actually counting the numbers that actually have gone through.
And
And
it's
there be
switched.
people,
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, there have been people who've had success where they've seen 100 jobs, that they've seen 100 jobs applied, and they still applied and still got a response, at least to get a screening or the interview, which is another discussion. We should talk about that in a little bit, but that when you're going to apply through LinkedIn, don't be afraid to apply, even if you see a 300, 400. But the other thing is to keep in mind that these jobs are globally placed. So that
Yeah.
anybody in the world could place, even though they may be looking for a local person, people are trying anything to get a job these days.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the issue. There is like, there's always a gray area when you have multiple applicants, because I've seen the actual thing where it says X amount of people clicked apply, and then it switched
Hmm.
back to just the total number of applicants, because LinkedIn rolled out something some months ago where it said clicked apply, which means
Right.
that they clicked it and they likely, made an application. And, it's so much gray area there, because you don't know if that number means they followed it all the way through, or they
Right.
just looked and they decided to move on. And I've seen legitimate recruiters say you should always apply. Don't be discouraged by the high number, because most of the applicants that apply, they don't necessarily fit the criteria. They'll just apply just in the
Yeah.
hopes of getting through.
Right.
There's also the wrinkle of AI mass applications and the errors that come with that, because when people deploy AI to apply for them, the AI makes mistakes when it comes to suspected matches for their roles. And so it'll
Mhm.
apply them just to anything that it thinks they would fit, even if they don't. And what it does is it clogs the lane for real people that actually fit that description the best.
Which is a good that you went there, because a lot of my excuse me, my recruiter friends have said that big challenge for them these days is the amount of AI applications that are coming through.
Yeah. Because
So
people are
let's
trying to
say,
get an edge. Yeah.
and people are trying to get an edge, and that deserves to be broken down in tiers. And you and I can do this because we're both writers and we both write professionally. And in the sense of, AI, when they write something, if you want to tell something that's AI generated, through my
Rocket
experience
emoji.
and through some of yeah, yeah. Well, the rocket emoji doesn't bother me as much as many times the run-on sentences, the
The
very lengthy
spearheadeds.
sentences, the
Yeah.
spearheadedness, the
30%, 25%.
or that they go
Um,
off on different tangents,
yeah.
or they regurgitate information that's already been repeated 50, 100 times. I mean,
Hmm.
yeah, we can even talk about that there are multiple job posts many times. 50 people advertising for a job or for a job description or for any kind of opportunity should be a red flag in your mind and spotting a job scam as well, because
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
AI generated, and what they're doing is one bot copies what another bot is copying.
Hmm.
Every now and then you get a real person who is not aware, and they'll repost it.
Yeah, I
But
actually just talked
it,
about that. Yeah.
yeah, and so other than that, it's good to go and search for the phrase in LinkedIn like you would on Google. Do that Boolean search, put a quote around a part of that, and sometimes you'll find multiple posts around that. Then you could be suspicious for sure.
Yeah, I actually just posted about that this morning. There's this
Mhm.
company. It's a event hall agency, and it has like 1,630 jobs as of like last night at like
I
midnight.
saw the post. Yeah.
Yeah, when I first saw it, it had 1,658, and then
Hmm.
what got my attention was it was a copywriter position. I'm like, that's interesting. Why would a event hall need a copywriter? And then I saw typing panelist and sales panelist, and I was like, okay, I see what this is. And basically what they've done is I've saw three profiles because I think that a lot of legitimate profiles have been hijacked and the original owners, they're no longer able
Hmm.
to access it. And I saw this one gentleman, his profile, and it's a real person and he has real content. But, in the last like 2+ months, all it is reposts of different jobs and it's a lot of congratulations and singular word comments. And,
Hmm.
that's a telltale sign that they just clicked like good point or valid or thank you, things like that, and there's no
Hmm.
actual original human thought on any of the interactions, which leads me to believe that it was taken over and then no one can access it. And
Right.
so from there, I mentioned at the close of that post is that be careful the job that you're sharing, because what these scammers do now, this particular kind, is they'll pretend to be helpful. They'll pretend to be, assisting people in their job search by sharing these opportunities. But what they're
Right.
doing is hiding in plain sight. So they're like, oh, if you see this person constantly celebrating people, constantly sharing roles to, fast track people to different roles that they might actually be a good fit for, you'll look at them
Hmm.
as someone to trust and you'll interact with them. And all they need is for you to send them their resume, because they could be like, oh, hey, I do share these jobs. I just need your resume and I can, put you in for this, or you could be a good fit for this. And then
Right.
that's all they need.
Yeah, and it. I think people who bait like that, you could see them do it to multiple people. So if you go to their comment sections, you'll see
Hmm.
the very same comments. I don't know. One of our friends, uh, uh, James, I have to look up his name.
James
I
Rose.
think James Rose. Yes, thank you very much. Sorry, James, I forgot for a hot second. He pointed. Getting older, what can I say? But he pointed to a couple of them, and where the pictures, the reverse Google works really well. I don't know if many of you, we've mentioned it on the show many times, but it's really simple. You take a copy of the person's profile. It's faster to use it through your phone than you do through a laptop. You go to Google, that there's a little camera sign on the right side of the screen facing it.
Hmm.
You activate that, you upload the picture, and it will find the real person
There's
or
a,
find
oh, go ahead.
persons. Yeah, they'll find persons for you, and likely will point to the one that has the most valid profiles that are on there.
And there's,
Sometimes, go ahead, go
And
ahead.
there's a caveat to that, because sometimes Google image search doesn't get the person. It'll also get thrown off by the open to work banner or the hiring banner, and it'll focus solely on that as opposed to the face in the image. The
Yeah,
other thing these scammers
that's
do
true.
to trick the image is they'll flip it. And so when you're searching for this image, the image is searching for the inverted version, or not inverted, but the reverse version of it. So you won't
Right.
find it that way. I've seen scammers do that. And then the other thing is, one second. trying to remember. When it comes to the image search, what happens is crap. What was it? I'm brain fart. Go ahead. Go ahead. It'll come back. Give
No,
me a
no,
second.
no. Well, no. Well, but I think people can start there. They can also Google the person or Google
Oh,
the
that's it. Got it.
phrases.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah, they could Google the phrases, certain phrases, put it in quotes, and put it when you put it in quotes, that narrows the search down. Instead of looking for that and some similar, they're looking for that exact one. So you want to search for the exact one, and you'll see multiple profiles, not just on LinkedIn, but perhaps used throughout the web. Where they may be using Instagram and they might be even using TikTok. By the way, did you know we are actually, hopefully, this is landing on my TikTok page as
Cool.
we're doing
Cool.
it.
See how
But
long it
for as
lasts
long
this
as
time, though.
let's see how long it lasts this time, right? But all in all, to say is that there's a lot of ways to do searches, and yes, it is worth your time checking out people before you engage them. You're going
And
to
there's
have to you're going to have to engage as many and as often as you can, because everybody's not who they say they are.
no, and then yeah.
As far as being, especially if it's somebody that you don't know. Go
And it
ahead, Jay.
also just came back to me when you're doing the image search. What I've seen is that when you search and you see multiple results with different names, like I've seen, a woman's name and then it'll be that same image, but a man's name underneath it. That
Yeah,
doesn't mean that that's a fake profile. What it does is it'll show every iteration that that picture has appeared online. And
right.
so let's say the person's name is, Catherine Catherine Montague, something like that, and then you
Uh-huh.
see John Smith here and Jason, Momoa, whatever, and you could think that that person is fake, but really it's just that they liked this person's post on LinkedIn, or they commented
Mhm.
on another person's post on LinkedIn, and the image search is just searching everywhere that picture appeared. And so I've seen people, they'll send me a message and say, "Hey, this is a scammer. I see all these pictures of them elsewhere," and I had to say,
Mhm.
I they're not necessarily a scammer. What it is just they're liking and commenting on these posts. And that's the other thing scammers do, is they'll like and comment on posts to appear credible and have a larger footprint. But really, they're just trying to steal your money and stuff.
Well, in most part, a lot of them are badly written comments that they've multiplied and copied, um, grammatically, no punctuation at times, and have and have wrong and have has wrong information overall. But they're not saying much on it. They're just doing that to multiple people to get somebody to bite. And for
Mm-hmm.
them, it's right now AI, these AI generated messages and postings or whatever are they're playing the numbers game until AI becomes a little bit more intelligent for them to be able to modify some of their responses based on different parts of language or whatever. I want to address this one comment though, as a LinkedIn user, and I understand where people are coming from. This is kind of where I'm hoping that we can make a dent in. And said job postings are most fake on LinkedIn, which is depending on your experience, that may be true, but it's categorically not true, in the sense that LinkedIn it has, when you see the postings, I guess when people mention is from other users saying that they have a job, as opposed to whether it's a fake company. And I think you have to address the one thing about the company before you address the other about the fake job. The other thing is that there are ghost jobs on LinkedIn that have been on for a while. Again, if we talk about the beginning, they're just collecting data, so it's not really fake. It's ghost, and yes, you should avoid both if you don't want your information spread in a way that you didn't authorize.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nasty game. I hate
Yeah,
what it's come to. Like, just there are moments where I sit and think about the scale of this and how vast it is, and it's just like, when you're a job seeker and you're just somebody who is trying to find work and continue to fund your life and continue to care for the people that matter to you, and you have to deal with all this. It's insane.
right.
I personally hate those posts where it's just like, "Hey, have a job opportunity, comment. or send me a DM and then you never hear anything back. And that's another way that they disguise data mining. Um, if you're really hiring, post a job. I know it costs to post a job, but if you're serious about it, then post the job. Um,
Yeah.
I just it's too it's too serious out here. I recently talked about this with this gentleman. He was unemployed for an entire year. He had an offer
Mhm.
on the table, accepted it, and then it was pulled out from up under him, and he took his life. And he left
Mm.
behind a wife and children. And
Right.
there's this hacker guy that I know, and he's tasked with the responsibility of trying to get this person's information to settle the estate. And you know your purpose, if you're a legitimate company, by doing this just to collect information and whatnot, this is the outcome of that. And then, in this instance, it was a fake company, so they don't care even more. But if you're a real company and you really care about people and you have real opportunities, then list the job and, cut out the games.
Right. I completely agree. And if you're a company, I'm hoping companies will be more aggressive, more vocal, and will start taking more public stands, not just on LinkedIn, but everywhere they possibly can about them, because this is very serious for job seekers. And those who do are going to separate themselves from their competition, because the perception is they're being vocal about it means that they care about people, and the ones that are not vocal about it and are very quiet about it, they are they don't care as much. I do want to get to this one comment. Jamie Leibovitz, thank you very much for commenting. She says, "What are your thoughts on listing with unnamed company?" Um, I get what the actual purpose may be. Is uh, that perhaps, first of all, there shouldn't be any unnamed companies, especially on LinkedIn.
No.
But there is, and they're on some of the other job sites. And I get it, because it might be they want people to be in love with the job and not the company. I get that intent for a few of them, but at the same time, the unnamed company is, I think, there's some people who don't know how to fill out the whatever's required for for the posting. So that's why it may look unnamed. So some of those might be legitimate companies that make mistakes in filling out their profile. But there could be a lot of different reasons. But you have a right to be suspicious and not apply to it, even if the
Yeah, I
job
mean, yeah.
looks good. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean that's the one thing we had spoke about on the last live is that in being this
Mm.
diligent and this vigilant, you will miss out on real opportunities.
Yep.
When it comes to an unnamed company, with what you said just now about them being concerned that someone might not love the company, I mean, newsflash, not everyone who works at a company loves that company. They're working there
Right.
because, they need to work in some instances. And then others, they
Right.
love the actual work that they're doing, but they may not be a fan of the company. That's just the reality of life.
Right.
That doesn't mean hide the name of the company. I mean, that's just odd
Not
and it looks
necessarily.
scam. Yeah, but I mean, it looks scammy when you do that. And so if you're a
Absolutely.
legitimate company, do everything you can to look, real and be real, because there's so many things going on out here that are fraudulent.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, you want to make sure you have all the information you need before you apply to the job. Don't apply
Hmm.
to just apply. And I think it goes back to what we said in other lives. If you apply one to 100 jobs in January already, or by January 28th, it's likely 10 of those companies you've given either have no intention to hire, or that they're fake company with a fake job, because
Hmm.
that's a lot of application. If you could do it legitimately, more power to you, but most people are pretty reckless and are anxious and are desperate at this particular point when they apply to that many jobs. If you apply to half of that many jobs, and that you've taken the time to do all the background work that it takes, then I think you ultimately, that this may sound funny for a lot of people, but you increase your chances because you've taken the time to not only do the background check, do the research check, but you maybe even found a person or two that may have announced it through a post and may have given some insight to what that job actually entails. So,
Mhm.
I'm saying the more care you take as well as applying is going to lower your job scam rate, as far as being exposed, at least. So, did
Mhm.
you want to add anything to that?
It takes a lot of repetitions to get to a point where you can just quickly pinpoint what is a scam and what isn't.
Right.
Like I said, I wish it wasn't this way. I wish job seekers could actually find a role, it's a fit, the company is a real one, they're really intentional about filling this role, they talk to you, things go well, and then you get a new position. But it's not that time. And you have to get to a point where if you see this, see a company without a website, or if you see the recruiters making the same comments everywhere, or if you see the image looks, shady, looks like it's stolen,
Hmm.
if you see that there's no activity on this recruiter's, profile,
Hmm.
then what are you actually recruiting? And
Right.
those are just the high level things, but like I said, it goes much deeper than that. And like I said, it shouldn't even be the case that job seekers have to be concerned about this stuff, but it is. And so, like, always trust your gut. It's better to not be scammed and just avoid an opportunity entirely than just talk against yourself and then do a decision in your heart of hearts isn't the right one.
Right, right. Here's a comment, and I'm going to come back to that a little bit in a little bit because I think it is important to understand uh, that the more work you do up front, it's going to save you time and make you more productive,
Hmm.
in essence, because I think a lot of people have spent a lot of times kind of spinning the wheels because they've applied to everything that kind of looked good, and in hopes of hearing something, but yet you've actually exhausted yourself in a lot of ways. Which Jason McDonald, thank you very much for commenting here. Spending a half hour on let's see, writing my resume on job posting and then asked to upload my resume, scumbags. I get that. There's the old Cam Newton meme that you asked me to now write in everything where it took me all this time to upload my resume. I get that frustration, but I think what it is making it a little bit a better flow for the recruiter and employer to get to process your information.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think it is something, but I wouldn't try to rewrite my resume for every upload that you do unless you're applying to different industries. And this is what I'm saying, and this is where you're getting going to get a little job scam slash job search help here. Is that when you apply to a lot of jobs within the same industry, you don't necessarily have to tweak your resume every single time. And that advice may vary, but if you're in the same industry applying to a lot of the same jobs, I think you should be aware of the differences, but you don't necessarily have to tweak your resume every single time. Even if it's general, um, you know, you probably shouldn't spend this if you're spending a lot of time tweaking your resume every time, you're spending too much time that's not necessary. And I think where people are getting caught up is that they go through those frustrations and they're applying to ghost jobs that they never hear back. So they spend all that time. They feel like, man, this is kind of rough. But understand, it's rough for everybody. It's not just rough for you. So just be aware of the differences and kind of think of smarter ways that you can go apply. But yeah, that's something that's not going to end anytime soon. So I'm told by my recruiter friends that they say that that's part of the process and that streamlines their process on the back end.
Yeah, and the other thing
Go
that
ahead.
he's speaking to is the ATS parsing. And so what
Yeah.
causes that is if your resume is not in a format that is easily able to be copied into this ATS system, then what happens is it makes you just have to re-enter everything, because if you have like columns or different blocks in it to store text, it can't necessarily read through those blocks. So it's best to just have straight text throughout the resume. And one tip I got from a resume writer was copy your resume and then put it into another blank Word document, but then just paste as plain text. And then what you see in that paste as plain text result is how it'll typically render in the ATS. So if it's a lot of run-on sentences or things are bunched together, that's what happens when you go with the like more pretty looking designs and a lot of the
Mm,
columns and the blocks.
yeah.
Um, and then, I made a joke post about this actually a few weeks ago. It was like just a picture of me, but like hundreds of times duplicated, and that was me giving a visual representation of all the workday accounts I've had to make
Right.
while applying.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah. You have to make an account on Workday for every job you apply. I
yeah,
didn't
because
know that.
every company has an individual Workday account affiliated with them. So it's not Workday's fault. It's not even the company's fault. It's just that because they use Workday for their ATS, then they have a specific account. And so your one account that you use to apply for, 10 other jobs, it doesn't apply to this one because they have their own unique
Gotcha.
account with them.
Gotcha. Gotcha. That's fascinating. I learned something new just now. Hmm. Okay. There's a LinkedIn users says I always check the postings before replying, though I'm not looking for a job last 4 years. Yeah, that happens, and that probably happens on all of your other the other job websites that you apply on. That long as your application is there, even if it's from 15 years ago, you may get a notification sometime. It's best to deactivate it, uh, which we hope in a larger discussions that job sites are only using it for just jobs and not for their third party um, practices and partners. But I don't want to go down that hole right now, but perhaps I will eventually. So I think this is pretty important. Jamie thanks us. And also, I think it's important to note that when you're applying to a lot of the same jobs, um, you do have to consider that the other parts are that you're not just applying to the job, that you're trying to get to know more of the company and perhaps getting to know more of the employees, if anything, to build relationships with them. I, I,
Mhm.
you know, eventually referrals can happen, especially if you are joining like your industry's organizations, associations. You can get more exposure and personal interaction engagement with people as you are a part of those organizations. And they could be very helpful in helping you find out what uh, give you inside scoops at least. And in some
Mhm.
cases, if you work with them on committees where you're doing different projects, where you do different presentations, then you increased your chances to referral because now they have a working knowledge of working with you. That
Mhm.
and I think that also it will cut down the amount of times that you have to go through applying cold.
Mhm.
Instead, you're applying to jobs that are a little bit more familiar because now you have more access to more companies through the associations and you being a participant in that association or that industry organization. So I think
Mhm.
that I think in this comment where he says he's applied to approximately 20 roles at Microsoft. Um, Unless you're familiar with the person, you can be ignored in getting applying for 20 jobs. Just so
Yeah,
you
and
know, you go ahead.
yeah, and when it comes to applying that to that many, can look like you don't have a clear focus, and I don't want to come off as insulting or anything, but if you've applied to 20 jobs at one company, it looks like you don't maybe to them it looks like you don't know what you actually want to do, and you're just trying to get in the door, which I completely understand because it's a
Mhm.
historically stable company, one of the most successful companies to ever exist. But When it comes to ghost jobs, the hardest thing to prove is the intent. You have to actually have somebody from that company say, "We're not intending to hire. We know we're
Right.
not going to hire, and we're posting this just to, play with people." And no one's ever going to say that. And so that's where the other telltale signs of a ghost job come into play, which is uh, many applicants, but no one ever says that they got the job. That's another thing you can do. You can search, you like double back on a job that you were interested in and apply to that had many applicants, and then search that company and that role, and then see if anybody ever posted, that they got it. Because when a person gets a job, they're going to post, typically 99% of the time, I would say, that they got it, because they want to let people know that they made it, and they like to, feel the celebration. And if you never see anyone say that they got the job, then that's another sign.
Right. And I can't speak for anybody at Microsoft, but um, if there are noticeable patterns, I imagine Microsoft has the resources to kind of vet even the number of people, the people, and how many jobs that they applied. 20 jobs in a single company might be a little excessive. I'm not sure. I can't say for sure. But if somebody applied for 20 different jobs, people looking at it might question if that person either is a, if they're a real person, because that's what
Yeah.
AI generated jobs do, or second, somebody's trying to game the system, and that they're being desperate, which also repels companies more than makes you more interested, unless there are 20 jobs that are very much correlated to each other, and that
Mhm.
they have 20 roles on the same team. But if you've applied two or three times, then you may have to try another strategy in order to get to it, or apply to other companies like Microsoft. But also
Yeah.
consider too, there are smaller companies perhaps looking for the same roles, who at least have the same skill set, who be
Mhm.
dying to hire you. And there's a lot of small companies that are looking for the onesies and twosies, not just for the 100 positions that you might qualify. So you might want to consider your strategy in that, just based on the not being perceived of being blackballed, because that's what companies will do.
And then there's the other thing when it comes to the scammers and how they use the fake jobs, is to get your information. And then you mentioned it before, they'll be you and apply. And the
Right.
purpose in doing that, since they're overseas, they can pretend to be somebody here and apply for roles. And they use that as intelligence to gain insight into the actual application process. So they can then mimic a legitimate application process so it looks real to the people they're scamming. I've seen that happen. I know a cybersecurity professional where a group of scammers out of India wanted to have an interview, and the entire time they're asking this cybersecurity professional about their experience at this massive company that they did IT for, because they're
Hmm.
trying to understand the inner workings of the business, how their IT structure is set up, so that they can then figure out a way to crack it.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And that brings us to we got about 10 minutes left. And actually, we can go on for a long time, but we'll cut it
Wow.
off for 10 minutes. But yeah, there's been a lot of good questions here. I do want to address Jamie Leibovitz's question about Open Work Banner. And we get that question all the time. And there are varying opinions about it. Uh, First of all, um, my problem isn't with the banner in as much as using the hashtag, the open to work hashtag, where it draws a lot of unwanted attention. But I
Mhm.
think the open to work badge is very useful. But I think you can cut down the amount of wrong attention by using it in only visible to the recruiter. And I understand, and we talked about on the show before about how there are scammers who will who can pay for the recruiter account and see the open to work banners. I get that part, but I'm talking about minimizing the amount of uh, attention from scammers who don't have that, which I don't think most of them don't. But that who's to say? I don't have any statistics. I wish LinkedIn would be much more vocal than they've been, but I think it helps ultimately recruiters. my recruiter friends who've been I've known for 10, 15 years, they all say use the banner, at least invisibly. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I liken it to if you're in the ocean and you need help and you're on the edge of drowning. If you don't call out for help, then it won't come. But at the same time, you can draw sharks. So you know,
Hmm.
I use it personally, but I need people to understand that what comes with that banner is a lot of nonsense. You draw real recruiters, but when you use that hashtag specifically because it's been compromised, you're going to get the people pretending to represent Robert Half, people pretending to represent Corn Ferry, pretending to represent Adecco, people pretending to
Hmm.
represent like Artisan Talent and all the other real recruiting companies. They'll put those businesses as their place of employment in order to get your defenses down because they know that if you see these well-known companies that you're likely to engage with them. And so
Hmm.
what I say do is use the one that has the recruiter option only, but just know what comes with it. You're going to get inundated with scams when it is the one that everyone can see. But
Absolutely.
overall, it is a better thing to do than not do. It's just know what comes with it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, I wanted to address, and probably we're not going to have time to talk about it. Maybe I'd like to have Russell Irby on the show.
Yeah, yeah,
Perhaps
yeah.
maybe the next time to do it. He has a very interesting perspective, and everything that I've liked everything that he said. And Russell, if you're listening, we're going to try to plan you in on one of our sessions here. Uh, to talk about resumes and how resumes are written um, in ways that there's several different angles that go through my mind because there's several different people who've said, that again using the whole ATS compliance thing, and but a lot of times most resumes, honestly, in my opinion, they're very badly written. They're terrible
Hmm. Yeah.
unless they're written by somebody who really has written and experience with recruiters who are I won't say all certified writers, but some of them. I try to connect myself with a lot of them. Copywriters are actually very good at writing resumes, in my
Yes,
experience.
yes, we
By the
are.
way, they're excellent. If you really you really want to look at a good resume, check out a copywriter. I'm saying I've never seen a bad professional copywriter resume. Just to let you know, there might
I
be
do want to
others that
speak to
might
something
disagree,
really quick.
but go
Um,
ahead.
for all time, anybody seeing this now and in the future, no one can help you beat the ATS. That's a lie. The ATS is a digital filing cabinet.
Yes,
What it
yes, that's
does
all it is.
is
It's a database. It's a
yeah, what
database.
it does is you apply, your resume is stored in there. And I actually talked about this, and there are actual photos of resume storehouses, the ATS storehouses in this post.
Mhm.
And what it does is when it talks about what they say by beating the ATS, they're twisting the actual score that the ATS gives you in the system that the recruiters see. And the score that
Mhm.
you get is based upon the likelihood that you would be a successful person in this role. And that comes from the keywords that you put in the resume, the way you speak to the experience that you have versus the qualifications for the role. All those things make you a stronger candidate, but it doesn't make you ever beat the ATS. It just increases the likelihood of you getting a call if you have a high score in that database.
If the ATS can read your resume,
Yeah.
if people think that the ATS rejects resumes, and I think
No, no.
that gets misconstrued is no. If they can't reject something that they can't read, or they don't reject at all. It's basically they're looking at the well qualified candidates first,
But then
and those are
also
was. Go ahead.
there are also the people that say, well, I applied at 11:52 and I got rejected at 11:53, which that's happened to me before as well. And what happens with that is it's a knockout question. So, like, for
Yeah.
example, you fit everything, but you don't have 5+ years of experience, you have three. That could be a knockout question that they put in there where
Mhm.
they have it mandatory. They want someone to have 5 years. The other thing is, I think you should be super literal when it comes to the years of experience that you list. So if the job says you need 5+ years of experience and you have 6 or 7, given the ageism issue that's running rampant, I suggest you just put 5+ years of experience. Like, do it exactly. So there's no way that that could actually work against you.
Right.
Um, yeah, it's hard. I understand, but like the knockout questions, another example is like if they say you need a master's degree and you don't have one, that could be something that they're not budging on. So it's a lot of reasons. But when it comes to like those immediate rejections, most likely it's because you answered a knockout question wrong.
Right. And as well as once you lie on a knockout question, let's say you do make it through, there is no turning back.
Hmm.
Being that if you're found out to be a liar, that you're automatically knocked out. And you're
Hmm.
thinking, and people have gone to a point to where, and some of this communication comes in kind of sketchy here, but a lot of them think that, well, say, well, then they might get a phone screen interview from the recruiter, which for the job seeker, a lot of them think, oh, that's an interview. I get an interview. That's great. Just so we can play hold your horses. That's not a real interview.
No,
they're
they're trying
trying
to
to
vet
see,
you.
they're trying to vet you. But having said that, though, I think recruiters could be much more helpful in explaining that up front and being much more forthright and saying that this is just a screening. I just want to have a quick conversation for 10, 15 minutes. We could do this. And they may set it up, even having a Zoom call and all that, but it's not an interview. And this is where
No,
you
no,
have to be a little bit smarter in that unless it's plausible, you may not get that call anyway, because there's people can add up your what you tell them in your experience versus the experience you say you have, and see that that doesn't match. You could be as rejected as if you didn't apply at all. So all that to say, I hope that we did you have any closing comments, by the way, before we close this out for this particular episode?
When it comes to any job, always try to connect with a real human that either works there or knows somebody that works at the company that you're interested in. And
Mhm.
it's going to when you're applying now, there's going to be a time delay when you're being diligent, and that's the other side of this job market is people are frantic, people are trying to act as fast as possible because of the
Mhm.
sheer level of competition. And when you do that, scammers love it. They love people who are ready to make a decision now without thinking. They're just trying to get, their nightmare scenario ended. But, it's always best to reach out to somebody who's real at the company if you know them. If you don't, say, hey, are you hiring for this role? Always go to the official website and see if the role is there.
Mhm.
And then look at the history of this person's profile to see what they're actually about. If you see anything that is suspicious, we're in a time where there's no time to talk against yourself. Like if you see they did something like they used the word kindly, they said, let's connect. You know, you
Bot,
responded to my poll recently,
bot,
like,
bot.
no, run the other
Yeah,
way.
right, right, absolutely. And I think too is hopefully you're coming away from this that now you understand a little bit more about ghost jobs and fake jobs, to help the community out. It helps everybody out if you don't call a ghost job a fake job. I understand where it comes from. That really helps, but I think that educates people more as to whether they decide. Because some people will decide to apply even just to be next. Eventually, when they're hired next, because job search is just not a short-term game. It's also a long-term game. It is something you want to fill your information bank with, so that maybe you can get the experience when you're hired. You can get the experience, or even if you have a bridge job, you want to take some extra courses so that you can find out more about how to get hired at XYZ type of companies. That
Oh,
could
that's
be
one more
helpful.
thing too.
Go ahead.
If you're ever the runner up for a position, never just drop off the face of the earth because you never know what could happen with that company. Like if
Absolutely.
you're number two, and I know the heartbreak that you feel behind that. It just happened to me not too long ago. Never
Mhm.
fall off the face of the earth. Just keep the contact going, and not don't come off like salesy and whatnot. Just genuinely show your continued interest in the company because you never know if that person who they hired might turn out that they lied on their background, or they don't like the
Right.
job and just up and leave because they took it and they were really waiting on something else. And if you don't keep the lines of communication open, then they'll forget you. And it's not anything personal. It's life. So continue to follow up with that company because those are the ones that are the closest opportunity for you leaving the job market. So yeah, just always keep the lines
Mhm.
of communication open with those that you came close with, and you never know what could happen.
And that's important too, because having hired before, instead of saying no, 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 you may rate them. The hiring manager may decide to rate the person one, people one, two, three, four, because one may turn out they found a better opportunity, so they just go to the next person instead of starting the process all over again.
Hmm.
Especially if it's in that 60 to 90-day window, a lot of companies implement where they give that person a probationary period. They don't make that probationary period. They may call on and just bring in person number two, especially if they kept themselves at top of mind and the hiring manager and keeping that relationship with the company overall. Because
Hmm.
if you've been number two, you've not just talked to one person, you've talked to several people. So you want to keep your lines open with several other people as well, so that you can, just in case something may happen. Anything can happen. Life does happen and changes happen. So
Hmm.
just so that you'll be aware. Thank you all very much for joining us here on the Job Scam Report podcast, LinkedIn Live. You can find it also on YouTube. You can go to my Substack at markanthonydyson.substack.com. It's on the ticker there, and you can find out more information, find out all the articles. I've written close to 60 on it since last May. I understand that's a crazy amount of articles, but that's what I do. I write. And should you have any questions, feel free to contact me, contact Jay. Also, our colleague, Ashley Price Horton. Thank you very much. She's a probably comment somewhere in here to give you all.
Hmm.
She's our local recruiter. So we rely
Hmm.
on her to give us her firsthand experience. And if you have any questions, feel free to connect, ask questions. If you have suggestions for the next podcast episode, we don't know when that will be because we don't have a set time. It's according to whatever schedule we all have. I'll be doing some privates on Substacks for the paid members, by the way,
Hmm.
coming up in the next couple of weeks. So if you want to be a part of that, you have to be a paid member. You can go to markanthonydyson.substack.com to find out more information about that. We will have other guests, and I'll be on here with other people. Other than that, thank you, Jay, very much for your time, which is very precious because you got a mission. And we appreciate you very much for all that you do. And thank the rest of you. You all have a great week and stay job scam free.